Hey everybody, I want to share some thoughts that I have and maybe some intuitions about what's going on with the coronavirus issue right now. I'm going to start with the most important part and work my way backward so that if you tune out, you'll still hear what I think is most valuable. And I think the most valuable part of this is that this is not the event you're looking for if you're looking for a global collapse or an economic collapse in the US or something like that. This is not the thing that brings us down. The thing that's going to bring us down is coming. It's probably the next thing. It may be a few months after, it might be a year after. I think it'll be less than a year after. But it is not this version of the coronavirus. This is a shot across the bow. This is our opportunity to prepare if we choose to. I'm going to be checking in with my notes a little bit because I don't have all this stuff in my head. So let's start with what I think is some of the other most important stuff. The media's ability to put us into panic has reached its maximum potential, and that's because as this virus spreads, more and more people are going to get it that we actually know, and we're going to have a chance to see how people actually respond to it and how serious it really is. And no amount of fear-mongering is going to work if we have had it ourselves, if we're seeing footage of actual people who have had it and said, hey, it's not that big of a deal, or if we have friends and family that have had it and seen that experience firsthand. So as this starts to take place, you're going to see the narrative change in the media, in the government, the CDC. It's going to move from being something that we should all be horribly afraid of to something that is really not that big of a deal, and it's all going to start to shift, and then we're all going to start to calm down. What's going to happen after that is a rebounding of the economy, and it's going to be a euphoric rebounding of the economy. People are going to feel like the market is invincible. Hey, we got past the coronavirus thing. It's a good time to get in the market. Nothing can stop us now. There's going to be these extra low Federal Reserve rates. There's going to be a lot of printed money. And of course, the government, the CDC, the scientific community, they're all going to be patting themselves on the back about what a great job they did with this pandemic that came into the world and what heroes they are. So everyone's going to be celebrating. The markets will be celebrating, the media will be celebrating, the government will be celebrating, the scientific community will be celebrating, and all of them, by the way, they're going to want some money. So that's what's coming next. I expect the stock market to go up to about 29 or 30,000. Here's what's interesting about what the media is doing right now. They're destroying their own reputation. They're the boy that cried wolf. What does that mean when the next thing comes and it's actually serious, but they've used all their superlatives up? They've already said crashes and crisis and destruction and mayhem and panic. They've already used all those words. So what are they going to say when something real shows up? Well, they're going to use all those same words. The difference is we're not going to believe them. And so we're going to go about our business, but it's actually going to be something real, and there's actually going to be a problem. But we're not going to really believe that until it's too late. But pandemics are a very unique form of crisis in the world because they are so difficult for the average person to verify. We don't have the scientific know-how or the tools for most of us to be able to know if what we're hearing is true or not. There's not video footage of what a virus does that we can look at and say, yes, okay, this is true or this is not true. It's not that easy. The other problem with the pandemic is that there are so many institutions and organizations that benefit from it. If you think about who's motivated to tell us the absolute truth, you'll quickly see from my list that it's not the people that it should be. Number one, is government motivated? No. The bigger the pandemic, the more control and power they have, or the bigger the fear of the pandemic. What about for media? Media is getting clicks, it's getting viewers. They're never making more money than they're making during a pandemic or a supposed pandemic. How about social media? All the social media companies are just off the charts with views, with hours logged by their customers. What about Big Pharma? Obviously, they're not going to be the ones to say this isn't a big deal. They're the ones that are making the vaccines. What about alternative medicine? Alternative medicine's making money doing this too. Well, what about scientists? What about research and development? That is a faction of society that is constantly looking for a reason to convince us they need more money to do more research on something. they're not interested in downplaying or being honest about what's going on in any kind of pandemic situation. The worse it is, or the worse we think it is, the more money they have coming to them and the longer their funding will be in place. Who does that leave left to tell us the truth? I don't know. I can't think of anyone. Ultimately, I believe that the mortality rate for this is going to be about equal to the flu, maybe even less, maybe a little bit more, but right around that area. I would be shocked if this turns out to be more than a 0.3% mortality rate. But I think it's going to be years before we really uncover the true mortality rate, because a lot of us are going to get this, we're not going to know it, then one day we're going to go in for a blood test and we're going to find out that we have an immunity to it, and like, oh, you must have had the coronavirus. Oh, really? I didn't even notice. I thought that was just a cold. So it's going to take a while for the truth to come out, but those numbers are going to keep dropping and dropping and dropping until it's just out of the media spotlight and we're just not paying attention anymore because we've got to worry about something else that they're sending our way. So one last thing, before we start measuring the severity of this based on the NBA canceling its season or the NHL or Disneyland closing down, let's have a look at their insurance policies and see exactly if they are losing money and how much. The other thing is, don't think that they don't have a comeback narrative waiting for this. Don't think that there's not going to be NBA resurrection season. Don't think that Disneyland isn't going to be pumping the hell out of their reopening and that they're going to get twice as many people showing up than they would have had. One of the interesting things about a pandemic is that it is like a naturally occurring form of martial law. If you want to see how people are going to respond to martial law, a pandemic is a great way to do it because it's self-imposed. They keep themselves from assembling freely. They keep themselves indoors. And we are certainly a whole lot more willing to accept certain impositions on our lives. You can shop on Tuesday nights for 3 hours. You can only drive your car to work and back or for necessities. That's an interesting aspect of pandemics that you don't get with a lot of other crises. So I actually do think that this is a test run for martial law. I think that this is getting us used to the idea of giving up our liberties. I think there is something nefarious behind what's happening right now. So these are just some thoughts that I have on the subject. The most important one being, and the one that I don't hear anybody else saying, is that this is a test run. That this is a shot across the bow. This is not the event that we're looking for if we're looking for something that's going to bring down the economy. I know it looks bad right now. I think within a week it will become a pretty typical alternative media narrative that you'll be hearing. Right now the alternative media seems to be saying the same things that the mainstream media is saying, which is that we have a huge problem. So there it is. I guess we'll see how this all plays out. Now, whether or not this is the event or not, I hope that you've been preparing somehow in your life for difficult times. All right, everybody, take care.